Elon Musk's media work has given him one of the biggest followings on the planet, because he's one of the only billionaires passing the joint to the left, tweeting memes, calling out the media, starring in Rick and Morty, and giving kids the inspirational 100-hour work week lecture.
They put in, 80 to 100-hour weeks every week.
All of this stuff has helped Elon Musk become one of the most likable billionaires out there. But you see, that's the trick. He's sold the public on his backstory and personality to get you hooked onto his products. He has become a walking advert for all of his businesses without having to pay a single penny in advertising. Instead, his advert is the story of a man going from nothing to conquering the world. So then the real question is, was any of his story actually true? Who is the real Elon Musk? Well, after hours of extensive research, I bring you the untold truth behind a man who built his life on lies. The story begins in Pretoria, South Africa, 1970. The Musk family was extremely wealthy, with Elon's dad, Elon Musk, owning half of the shares of an emerald mine. He later recalled in an interview on Elon's childhood that the family was, quote, very wealthy. We had so much money at the time that we couldn't even close our safe. One person would have to shove the money in, and the other would have to slam the door shut. And then there'd be all these other notes sticking out, so we'd have to empty them into our pockets. End quote. Although having said this, it was far from a happy childhood. Whilst being born into incredible wealth, Elon suffered relentless abuse from his father.
It was very violent. It was not a happy childhood. My father has serious issues.
But it didn't stop there. In 9th grade at Bryanston High School, even the school kids went after him.
And when asked about being bullied in school...
I was almost beaten to death, if you call that bullied.
In an interview with NBC News, Elon's mother, Mae Musk, told Maria Shriver about her son's struggles.
He was always brilliant, but brilliance doesn't always go into practical benefits.
Elon would recall that he was basically hiding from this gang as they hunted him down, because he accidentally bumped into this guy in assembly that morning, and this guy had taken some huge offense at that. So later that day, while Elon was having lunch, this guy snuck up on him, kicked him in the head, and then shoved him down the stairs. When Elon reached the bottom of the stairs, a bunch of other guys gathered around him and started kicking him while the first bully slammed his head into the ground to the point of Elon blacking out. As a result, he had to go to the hospital, missing school for weeks. This dark childhood affected Elon greatly, as it would for most people, but the effects of this would later become more apparent in his future life. Elon eventually left South Africa for the US, where he would go on to intern for a startup in Silicon Valley. During his internship, he had the idea for his first business, after a salesman for Yellow Pages walked into one of the offices where he worked and tried to sell his startup. The salesman's idea was for an online listing ad in addition to the company's normal Yellow Pages listings. But the pitch was poor and the guy didn't really know anything about the internet, but Elon saw a glimmer of promise in the idea and used it for himself. So in 1995, Elon and his brother Kimball formed Global Link Information Network, which changed its name to Zip2 because Global Link Information Network is a terrible name. The idea behind Zip2 was to convince businesses to create a web presence on a searchable web directory. At the time, this was very ahead of the curve.
Something that allowed you to get maps and directions on the internet, and then something that allowed you to do online manipulation of content, kind of a really advanced blogging system. We started getting some interest. I mean, half the time we'd be like, what's the internet? Even in Silicon Valley. But then occasionally somebody would bite, and we'd get a little bit of money from them.
The Zip2 story is the first part of Elon's current PR strategy. Elon always makes out that his time at Zip2 was the classic Silicon Valley origin story. He'll always talk about how he had to risk everything with only $2,000 to his name, a ton of student debt, whilst also being so broke he couldn't afford an apartment.
But things were pretty tough in the early going. I didn't have any money. In fact, I had negative money. I had huge student debts. So, in fact, I couldn't afford a place to stay and an office.
But this was just a story. Musk was in reality living on his father's money, who also paid for his university fees and invested $28,000 into the company. Despite this, he tried to claim that his father was broke, painting himself as coming to America with nothing. But I understand why he'd exaggerate his beginning story, and there would be no harm done if it stopped there. After 4 years of working on Zip2, Elon and his brother finally reached the golden point that most tech startups could only dream of in the beginning, the acquisition of the company from a bigger company. In 1999, the company was sold for $305 million, with Elon getting his $22 million share. And this is where Elon's public story begins to take a more dishonest turn.
Hi, Elon Musk speaking.
It's 7 o'clock in the morning, and Elon Musk anxiously waits for his golden payoff, his prize for paying his dues in the valley. A year ago, Musk sold his software company, Zip2, which enabled newspapers to publish online for $400 million cash.
3 years ago, I was showering at the Y and sleeping on the office floor. And now, obviously, I've got a $1 million car and quite a few creature comforts company. So this is an ATM. What we're going to do is transform the traditional banking industry. I do not fit the picture of a banker.
X.com, this is Julie.
One of the many misconceptions about Elon is that he was the co-founder of PayPal.
So, I'm going to put up something that probably looks familiar to most people here. This is the homepage of PayPal in 2000. Elon was a co-founder.
He's not. What happened is Elon Musk started a company called X.com with the money he made from Zip2. The basic goal of X.com was for customers to be able to email money to each other rather than having to deal with everything in cash.
There was a little feature that just seemed like an obvious feature, which was the ability to transfer money from one person to another by entering a unique identifier like an email address.
Musk essentially grew X.com's user base by giving money away for referrals, until the business was eventually bought by X.com's competitor Co-Infinity. This was primarily because X.com had some important paperwork for financial regulation that was pushed through earlier. However, in his time running X.com, he was reported to be a terrible manager. X.com was losing a lot of money, and important talent was getting so fed up with his micromanagement that they were leaving rapidly. The rest of the employees eventually got so fed up, they enacted a coup to get rid of him. Although, when X.com merged with PayPal, Musk re-emerged, becoming CEO once again. During his time at PayPal, he was struggling to generate enough revenue, leading to his predatory actions against small-time PayPal users. You see, a lot of PayPal's profits in the early days with Musk came from closing accounts with no real explanation as the company pocketed the balance. The idea being that small-time users couldn't afford to take serious legal action, and it was pretty widely reported at the time, and since they weren't a bank, nobody could do anything. It was all a part of PayPal's early acceptable use policy. Although even with these predatory actions, Musk's incohesive business model led to him being removed as CEO once again. But this time it really didn't matter. He went on to make $165 million when PayPal got bought by eBay, and during this time things were looking up, and he married his first wife, Justine Wilson. However, Justine would recall that his controlling behaviour didn't just stop at work. Justine claimed that even on their wedding day, Elon's deep-rooted insecurities from childhood came to the surface as he told his wife,
"I'm the alpha now."
Elon would always try to assert his control over Justine. For example, during their frequent arguments about his overbearing control, Justine reportedly said, "I'm your wife, not your employee," to which Musk responded, "If you were my employee, I would fire you." By this time they had moved to Los Angeles and had their first child, a boy named Nevada Alexander. The same week, Nevada went down for a nap and stopped breathing. He was 10 weeks old, the age when male infants are most susceptible to sudden infant death syndrome. By the time the paramedics resuscitated him, he had been deprived of oxygen for so long that he was brain dead. As Elon's wife grieved openly about it, Elon would snap, telling his wife to stop being so emotionally manipulative. After getting fired from PayPal, Elon began crafting a persona and fake story. He'd seen the success this had brought Nike and Apple, so he would take it one step further, using his media presence as an advertisement for his products. And he employed this ruthlessly, fabricating and straight up lying about who he is and how he got to where he is. So far I've shown you just some of the exaggerations and unflattering truths behind his origins, but it was in 2004, as Elon joined Tesla, where we can start to see just how much dishonesty there is behind Elon Musk.
The point being that these ventures now seem to have a wonderful momentum and things are going well, but I remember well there was a point in time when each of them had their tipping point and could have gone either way. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the origins of Tesla.
Sure. After PayPal, I decided I wanted to get back into electric vehicles and make something happen in that arena, particularly since GM had come out with the EV1, and I thought, okay, well, there's not really a need for a startup company to develop electric cars because obviously GM is going to create the EV2 and the EV3, but so I thought, okay, well, we've got to try to create an electric car company. But it wasn't as though in creating these companies that we thought that we would be successful. I thought that the most likely outcome was failure, but it was still worth doing.
Seems like quite an inspirational story, but did you notice how Elon never alludes to the original creators of Tesla? It's a lie by omission. You see, Tesla was actually the brainchild of a tiny band of obsessive Silicon Valley engineers who would go on to collaborate with and collide with Elon Musk.
He wasn't the founder in the sense of he wasn't, we started it.
Well, I mean, this is one of the things that I found kind of fascinating about him, is that he's actually accomplished some amazing things in his own right.
He's totally amazing.
Yeah, SpaceX is amazing, and he's done some interesting things with Tesla for sure. I'm not sure why he has to also say that he was a founder when he wasn't. I don't understand that.
Yeah.
Their vision was for transport to use energy that was better for the environment. So they approached Elon, and after hours of convincing, he invested $6 million into the company.
And Musk invested $6.35 million of his own money in the Series A round to help get Tesla Motors off the ground, and became chairman of the board.
But at this point, Musk had nowhere near the cult following he has today, and was still finding his footing as a public figure. Because of this, Musk was seen as just another boring investor. As Tesla launched their first car, the spotlight expectedly landed on the co-founders and CEO of the company. In a Times article detailing Tesla's launch, Musk's name wasn't mentioned because, well, he wasn't the guy running it. But this bothered Elon deeply. He needed to create a public persona. Because of this, he responded to the article by contacting the founders of Tesla, claiming, if anything like this happens again, please consider our relationship with Tesla to end immediately upon publication of such a piece. Please ensure that the New York Times publishes a correction as soon as possible. Musk now wanted to get vengeance. The founders later claimed in an interview that this was, quote, the first time we bumped heads was really over that press coverage of the debut. We had technical disagreements that we worked through, and it was always very collegial. We'd work through our opinions and come to a conclusion. That was the first time where it was this emotional. And as Musk wasn't the CEO, he would just come in every few weeks to look at developments and then demand changes that disrupted the workflow. It was one step forward and two steps back according to the VP of Tesla, which meant Tesla's growth would be stalled, deliberately. It was an excuse to remove the CEO for Elon Musk to gain more control over the company, as they were starting to grow exponentially at this point. So in 2007, after organising and pressuring other investors in the company, Elon told the CEO and co-founder of Tesla that he was being removed. There was no discussion, the co-founder said. I didn't get to hear what they said. I didn't get to defend myself. I felt totally stranded. I mean, this guy had been shut out of his own company. And after a series of court battles, Elon Musk managed to kick the original founders out. They settled out of court, and Elon was now legally allowed to call himself the co-founder of Tesla.
Would no longer be part of Tesla?
No.
Is there anything you can say about why you left?
No. I was voted off the island, and in a rather rude way, it wound up with some lawsuits and some settlements, and it's history now. Yeah, so I can't say a lot about it.
Musk was now running the show, going on to make Tesla one of the highest valued car companies in the world. But have you ever wondered how? How is it that a company selling thousands of cars a year is now valued more than all the other car companies that sell millions of units?
I mean, the easiest thing in the world is to get a bunch of smart engineers to design a really cool car. The hardest thing in the world is to build hundreds of thousands of them profitably, and distribute them profitably and service them profitably and adequately. That's sort of the moat that these other car companies have. I mean, Porsche is coming out with a tremendous electric car in a few months. Audi has a whole series of electric cars coming out. The first one is out already. Even Jaguar, in your home country, has a terrific electric car out in the I-Pace, and the next XJ sedan is going to be electric. And these guys all know how to build cars.
Well, this is where Elon Musk's PR work has worked wonders. See, he'd pitched Tesla like he did with X.com with his larger-than-life picture. He'd used the media to make people believe in his products as being at the forefront of innovation, giving his products fancy looks, telling every interviewer he could about his bootstrap origin story, working 120-hour work weeks, creating all these products as a result of his genius innovation. When you buy into the story, you start to buy into the products. You feel as though if you get that Tesla, you'll be making a change in the world.
And, Tesla has $10–11 billion of debt. Tens of billions of purchase obligations to Panasonic and all kinds of other liabilities out there. There's the wild card of Elon Musk. The man is a pathological liar. He cannot deny having committed securities fraud here in the U.S. with that false buyout. Any other CEO would have been fired by his board in 2 hours for that nonsense. Tesla is a completely dysfunctional organization.
But of course, Musk never talks about this, just like he never talks about the fact that most of his companies are only alive because of government subsidies. But when it comes to government subsidies for normal people who've had their businesses and livelihoods crushed in the last year, he'll say that's a very bad idea. In fact, it was these subsidies that have led to Tesla being currently sued by both Germany and Canada for subsidy fraud. And Musk's dishonesty doesn't even stop there. Musk has defrauded Tesla investors billions of dollars, not to mention all the other countless personal lawsuits.
If you look at what some of the things that Musk has promised over the years, in 2013 he said they were going to be producing the Model X by 2014. We look back 2015, 16, 17, 18. Each one of those years they put out releases saying they're going to ramp their Gigafactory. They're going to break ground on the Gigafactory in China. Still hasn't happened. They said they were going to do 100,000 to 200,000 Model 3s in the back half of 17. They did less than 2,000. So I think what Tesla does and what Musk does is he puts out these targets, these claims for investors to be happy about in the future and thus give him money to fund current losses, and then he misses them. And this has happened. We've counted over 115 mistruths, and the board continues to let him put out these tweets, etc. So I think the board is respected. I don't think they understand the auto industry, and I think he has very little to no oversight, and I think that's a problem.
So why is this stuff not common knowledge? Well, because Elon is a master of PR. He and his team know exactly what people want to hear. He knows that in this time where wealth inequality is the highest it's ever been, we all want to think that those with hundreds of billions made that money through hard work and innovation. So that's why he spends so much time crafting his appeal to millennials who are burnt out, depressed and poor. That's why you see him making cameos in TV shows. That's why he'll go on the Joe Rogan podcast for 3 hours. It's why he'll tweet all the things that people want to hear. He'll convince you that he's a man driven not by greed or power, but for the betterment of humanity. Meanwhile, he'll fire his employees for being pro-union and make up some bogus reasons about them testing positive for THC, and then proceed to smoke a blunt on the Joe Rogan podcast. And this is just the small personal things, let alone the fraud and the fake origin stories. The whole thing is a facade, and people seem to be buying into it more and more. He's literally the monorail guy from The Simpsons.
Cloud, is there a chance the track could bend? Not on your life, my Hindu friend.
What about us Brendan slobs?
You'll be given cushy jobs.
And so it all starts to fit together. From the twisted childhood, the lies about his past, the lies about his companies, the court battles, the lawsuits. This is exactly why Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin denounced him, not just because of his mission to privatize space, but because they knew his mission was built on lies. They know the real Elon Musk, and they don't trust him. But most of the public actually do, which just shows you how well a good PR campaign can convince anyone of anything. So as Elon Musk continues to rapidly develop Neuralink, which is Elon's pet project to introduce brain chips into the general population, you'll notice that there isn't any outrage, because the PR works its magic. The only outrage about Neuralink comes from those who actually work on it. It's why 5 of the 9 founders of Neuralink have already left the company after seeing straight through Musk's facade. Which brings up the thought that maybe this man really wasn't all he was hyped up to be. Maybe this man isn't the real-life Tony Stark. Maybe Elon isn't the savior he's made out to be. Maybe Musk is just another man making billions from dishonesty, inheritance, manipulation and ruthlessness. Maybe Elon Musk is just a symptom of a sick society.